So, this is the third morning of the war, and the news is full of horrific stories. And I want to tell people that I think I can count myself lucky, and I think a lot of people can count themselves lucky that we have a natural tendency to try to be positive, to try to see how we can cope with this horrific situation, that we don't fall into despair. But not everybody has this mechanism. But I'm like, I wake up and I say, I'm so grateful for my life. I'm so grateful that I'm not in a situation that these poor people in the south of Israel have dealt with and are still dealing with now. And I'm just saying, I just feel compassion towards them on the one hand, and on the other hand, I appreciate even more the fact that I don't live near Gaza. And I'm thinking a lot about Gaza and what makes people do such things. And it's definitely a question for sociologists or people that are expert in how groups form and follow an ideology, a fascist ideology. And we have Iran next door. No question. Because when human beings are conditioned to feeling that babies are their enemies, they can just go and gun down people. It's scary. It's sad for them, especially because human potential is such a profound issue. There's a saying that it was actually by a German writer. I believe it was Kastner who said, the one who wrote children's books, famous for children's books. He said, Erich Kästner, he said, we can see how low human beings can go, but we can see also how high they can go. And definitely, this is one thing I've been always interested in, human potential, especially when I'm teaching, like how do you take a human being and motivate them to do good things and to learn and to grow and think independently and yet also learn from history, from, to get out of your personal self. But on the other hand, societies can corrupt a person. Societies such as the ones in Gaza, the Hamas, it's a Satan cult, it's a satanic cult, not unlike other cults that condition people to kill. It's like Charles Manson on a huge scale. If we study Charles Manson, I was always fascinated with this because I lived in the US at the time, and I'm thinking, what makes people follow a leader that tells them to do things? And I think religion has a lot of force, and religion can lift you very high, but it can also cause a person to go very low. And we have seen this in Israel. There are rabbis that teach to hate others that are not identical to us, and all kinds of nonsense. And then there are rabbis that teach love and compassion and to rise above. And these are the ones I want to know. These are the ones I want to follow. The ones who teach love. The ones who don't preach for hate. I've been hearing rabbis, and they're just so uplifting, their messages about how we need to take this horrific situation and learn how to love each other more, how to care more. And I absolutely believe this is the lesson to be learned. This is definitely the kind of Judaism I want to follow. And when people generalize and put people in groups, that's never going to happen to me. I'm never going to generalize all Arabs, all Muslims, all whatever. But there is a problem with Hamas. It is also connected to a fascist regime in Iran. Russia, or both, God knows. I don't know what's happening there. But as one human being, what can I do? I can just try to be a better person, try to remember that I'm very fortunate not to be in a situation where I have freedom to come and go. There are people, I understand, that are in bomb shelters for the past 48 hours. And I want people to know this because, unfortunately, world opinion matters to this small, tiny country, state of Israel. And people maybe don't realize what's happening right now, that there are people in bomb shelters and there are terrorists trying to kill them. We still have the situation. However, we have a country full of well-trained men and women. I myself have been to the military. I know how to operate a gun. I don't know if I still remember, but all these people were helpless against this small band of terrorists who were extremely well-trained. And you know why? Because of the deep division in our nation. The deep division that allows someone to sleep, allowed someone, not just someone, but a lot of people have neglected our security. Instead of thinking of security, they thought about securing a seat in the parliament. And it's not a matter of left and right. This is the kind of mindset that is the problem. It's not a matter of left and right at all. It's the division and the fact that politicians don't really care. I mean, if I don't understand about security, I'm not going to be the Minister of Security. I wouldn't take a role just because of some sort of parliament agreement. So you've never been to the army, you have zero combat experience, and yet you're in charge of security of the nation, like inner security. And people are getting killed, and there's a lot of security issues, and yet this man keeps his job. And this is the most important job in this country. And we give it to a person with zero combat experience and with a lot of experience in causing turmoil. Just because you have a yarmulke on your head doesn't mean you're a good person. Just the same as just because you're secular doesn't mean you're a liberal person. You could be the most fascist person, like the person who pushed the Rabbi D in a prayer, and people who attack people praying. They're not liberals at all. And people with a yarmulke who are sitting in the government and don't have a clue, and yet they're there because this is their chair. They're in love with the chair. They're in love with the chair. And they don't care. They don't really care about you, me, or anyone but themselves. And they have these TikToks where they interview them, and they're so full of themselves. Oh, Iran wants, there was a headline last week, Iran wants to kill our Minister of Security, Inner Security. Let them. Let them do whatever the hell they want with him. He's horrible. I'm not saying that he should die, but let him resign. People should resign from this government. You don't have combat experience, you haven't served in the army, don't sit in the parliament. Don't make decisions sending soldiers to die. I saw a list of all the soldiers that were killed, and I thought you could just look at their faces. Handsome young men with so much to live for, sacrificing their lives for me, for everyone in this country. And going to the army is not fun. It's a duty. And as long as citizens of Israel aren't forced, like the citizens of Germany or Switzerland or wherever you have to go to the army, where army is obligatory, as long as it's not clear that you have to go to the army, it's not a choice. You have to go to the army. You want to pray? Do it on your private time. We have a situation where people weren't prepared, even people that were trained in the military, because the leadership failed. And we have to say this. I'm not saying it as right versus left. It's stupidity versus intelligent decision making. I mean, we marked 50 years to Yom Kippur War. This is so much worse than Yom Kippur War. I haven't lived here all throughout all the wars. I lived also abroad, but I was here at 67. My father fought for Jerusalem, and one bad decision was giving the keys to Al-Aqsa to the Muslims. This has always been an excuse for riots among Arabs. Religion isn't a mosque, religion is faith. God doesn't need a house, it's for the people. And as long as people have these fascist ideas about holy places and not sanctifying life, life is holy. This life is holy, and my life is holy, and your life is holy. A building is just made out of brick. It's just material. A mosque matters zilch. What matters is babies and children. And it doesn't matter if you're Arab, or Jew, or I don't care which ethnicity you are. All life on this earth is precious. And if you think that we can just divide and rule, the leaders should leave immediately. The problem is the governments and the politicians just seek to create wars and hate among us. And yes, I think the Israeli side failed its citizens, and the blood of all those poor young people that were murdered during a party, that were murdered fighting for their country. Oh my God, so many soldiers, so many citizens killed for what? For what? A hateful ideology on the one hand, and a stupidity of a government that puts in key positions people who haven't been to the army. For God's sakes. Yes, it includes the left. Yes, it includes politicians, which I will not name, that haven't been to combat. Yes, our Prime Minister was in combat. Why in the world would he allow these appointments? And the answer is, we had no choice probably, because this is the way our politics works. And it's so sad, because we are in such a dangerous place, and we're always living in denial. Why are the prices of apartments here, for the real estate here, so expensive, when we are neighbors with Iran and Iraq and the worst fascist regimes of terror, of Hamas and God knows what else, in Lebanon? It's because we are in an illusion that we are thriving. And we are, there's so much technology and success in medical, and there are people that are writing books here and are doing wonderful things. And I really enjoy the wealth of culture here, whether it's books or art or music, that is tremendous. And you don't realize that we're living surrounded by fascist regimes that want to murder us. If they only could. We just got a glimpse of the nightmare scenario that was always on the table. I mean, I remember looking through my father's war album. Before 67, we had Faydayoun, we had all these Arab terrorists that were coming, and they were just killing people and leaving their bodies, and just horrific history of violence, where our people were just treated no differently than the Holocaust. These people are Nazis. There are people that are killing others just because there are Jews, just because they're different than them. They also killed Arabs. They just want this country destroyed. And for what? So it will become another fascist regime? Like, I don't know, I'm just thinking, so many mistakes have been made by both left and right. And as long as we don't admit it, as long as we live in this denial, I don't think it can get better. We have to stop fighting and start thinking how we can get out of this horrible situation. I'm not willing to give up. I'm not a politician, I'm a teacher, and I can tell you the most important job I have is to teach kids independent thinking. Independent thinking, and also red lines. You do not speak in violence towards another pupil. If only we had teachers that gave limits, if only we had families who gave limits to their children regarding violence. Because this internal violence within us, this internal hate, I'm not talking about even people that are different than you, hating another person just because they're different, bullying, the amount of violence that's tolerated, it also creates turmoil. And that turmoil invites our enemies to conquer, divide and conquer us. There's a way to demonstrate and speak up in societies, and that red line has been crossed. You don't chase your prime minister abroad and scream. I understand the pain. I think that this regime has made a lot of mistakes, but the way you make changes is not through emotional screaming violence. It's by trying to figure out how to speak in a quiet voice and speak your truth. Not in screaming. When people scream, nobody's listening. The demonstrators had valid points, but the way they demonstrated, the violence they used, just, they lost the argument that way. Nobody listens to you when you're screaming. Nobody listens to you when you're threatening other people with violence and pushing. Yes, you can care, but the only way rational decisions can be made is through rational thought processes, not through screaming. Yes, I know the Russian Revolution was not made by talking. But you know, what did you get? You got a communist regime that was probably, for sure, worse than the Tsar. Maybe for the Jews not? No, also, it was the same. So, I feel so sad for this country because I don't want to see it destroyed. We really have to keep our independent thinking, and we have to keep red lines. We have to learn how to talk to each other, and we have to make very, 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 very strong, very clear decisions about letting go of all those people in charge of our security immediately. Tomorrow they should leave. Today they should leave. Because what happened shouldn't happen to anyone, to any country. And as for the Hamas, there's a saying in Arabic, Kul Kaleb biji yomo. Every dog has his day. And I love dogs, but in Arab society, it's a term for someone who's not a very good person. I can tell you, their day will come. It already has. It's very sad that people are taught to hate other people. It's the saddest thing, in fact. And I remember my mother saying to me, a Jew doesn't hate. She said it and she acted in another way, by the way. It's not enough to say. She was not a good role model for me, I have to say, because she didn't raise loving children, except me. I was very, very different than my siblings, because I always needed to love animals, to love others. And it wasn't always the right people I loved, I have to say. But animals, it's always right to love animals because they need our... Children and animals always need our love and deserve our love. But when you love the wrong people, they just use you and abuse you. And that's something I didn't know to protect myself from. I'm saying it as a personal level. As much as I feel for the Palestinians that have been abused by their regime, I cannot let them come near me and mine. I cannot let them destroy what's been built here by my ancestors. I cannot let them just come and kill people and act in their vicious way because they've been abused. There's an excuse for abused people, but it can only be excused up to certain limits. And there's one point where you just have to say stop. And I'm talking about internal abuse to those that are abusing the fact that some people go to the army and others don't. It has to stop. The Arab population should also be in the army. We have some Arabs serving in even high places, Bedouins for sure. And it's time that everybody who lives in this country called Israel goes to the army. I would love now to help. I'm sure I can't contribute in the military because I'm not that kind of a person, but I can contribute by telling people we really have to embrace our democracy, not in the way that it's being made into a slogan, but in a beautiful, open, quiet dialogue where people listen to each other, not make speeches such as I made, but creating dialogues, really listening to people. But there are some red lines, and one of them is it should be obligatory that every citizen, men and women in this country, should serve in the army unless they have a medical issue. That's it. That's number one. Number two, the people that are leading security should have experience. It's like, you apply for a job. Yeah, this looks like a conference. You send a CV. And your CV says, I have 0 experience in the military. What did you do? I organized violent uprising against military. Okay, let's give you security, internal security. We take people that are absolutely incompetent and we let them be in charge of security. What the hell was our Prime Minister thinking, giving our security to these people? And these people should today resign and even leave this country because they are responsible for what happened. I expect terrorists to kill. What I don't expect is for security not to protect us from terrorists. I think what's happened here has to be stopped. And yes, I'm a little bit angry now, but I think all decisions should be made under cool, calm, rational thinking. It's just too crazy what's been going on in this country. We have to learn to talk to each other, and we have to stop blindly following people that lead us towards very bad places. We have a saying in Hebrew, kabdeu v'chashteu, respect him and suspect him. We can't place blind faith in anyone, except maybe God. But even then, it's God as we understand God to be. There's so many interpretations, so many different ways of understanding God. And nobody has the right to act as if they're God. Nobody's above another person, except if you're in a role where you have to be in charge of security. You need to have a very, very long history of dealing with combat situations. Otherwise, please resign. Please resign today. That's my message, if anybody hears me, that it's not enough to fight Hamas. It's also important to make sure that Israel has a functioning army, has security that works, and competent people. Make sure that this regime makes a lot of changes. Want to be Prime Minister? Fine. But don't appoint people you can manipulate or that are popular or whatever. You appoint people who can do the job. This is my message to Benjamin Netanyahu. And I don't think that threatening Gaza with flattening them is a very rational way of achieving our goal. I'd like to see action. I don't want to hear words. I want to see you protect us. Because, reacting always creates worse results and consequences. Had we had better security, we wouldn't have to go, and civilians in Gaza wouldn't be murdered now. Because, yes, Hamas is the cause, but it's also security, the bad security situation that caused so many of our Israeli citizens to be brutally murdered and are causing the civilians in Gaza to be killed because their leaders are living there amongst the children and the women, and it's such a crowded place, and the whole situation comes from our poor security. Everybody's paying the price is what I'm saying. everybody, because we have first security. And we cannot compromise on this. It has to change. It has to change today. I don't know how it's going to happen, and I hope our American allies who are giving so much money to Israel will just say, hey, we give you money on the condition that you change the one who's in charge of security, because this doesn't go. You cannot just, start a war because you don't have good security. That doesn't work like that. You have to prevent. And this is my conclusion. This is why I do yoga. That's why I do everything. Prevention is better than the cure.